We have some special guests in studio.
Yes. Thank you, Coolmet Studio. Me can't do it on the music, no. Yeah. You know the vibe show. Me got to sing to my baby girl. Yes. My girl, why are you so beautiful? What did God think that he was doing? Yes, when he made you. My girl, why are you so beautiful? Me can't just get you off my brain. Yeah, I mean I want to go insane. Alright, so this thing called love. Always take a time, things take a little time. And when me all you baby girl, yeah, in the bump and grind, you but always fun, enjoy every time. Because the love we have unstoppable. You know, baby girl, we untouchable. We untouchable. Hey. My girl, why are you so beautiful? What did God think that he was doing? Yes, when he made you. My girl, why are you so beautiful? Me can't just get you off my brain. Yeah, I mean I want to go insane. Alright, so you make me feel like we have to rub a dub in the tub. We contain so much love. With every waking moment I'm thinking of you. And like my father done used to tell me, yeah, it takes two love, powerful and it is foolproof. You must have the powers of souls to contain it for true. Love is what we do when we together, boo boo. You increase the passion with some lingerie too. My girl, why are you so beautiful? What did God think that he was doing? Yes, when he made you. My girl, why are you so beautiful? Me can't just get you off my brain. Yeah, I mean I want to go insane. So, this thing called love. Always take a time, things take a little time. And when me hold you baby girl, yeah, in a deep bump and grind, you are always born for me enjoy. Because the love we have unstoppable. You know baby girl, we untouchable. Yeah, we untouchable. My girl, why are you so beautiful? What did God think that he was doing?
Okay, well, let's welcome our listeners again. It's 11 past the hour of 1 o'clock. We welcome you to Talk on the Block for today, Tuesday. And we have some very interesting individuals with us here in studio today. And let me just introduce our visitors. We have with us Mr. Philip Toysher, who is the director of The Last of the Carafuna, a film we'll be hearing about later. Mr. Toysher was in Dominica 37 years ago when he made this film concerning the Kalinago people, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But we also have with us Ms. Susan Pellegrini, who is a producer and director of Synergy Production Company Limited, and from New Jersey in the United States, as well as Ambassador Crispin Gregoire, who is with us, a Dominican, of course, who needs very little introduction. Ambassador Gregoire is there in his capacity with these individuals as a producer, and they will tell us a little bit of what they're doing. But let me just say, as we begin, good afternoon and welcome to all of you to the studios of Q95 Radio. Welcome, Mr. Toisha.
Thank you very much for pronouncing my name correctly.
I had some practice before, so
thank you.
Absolutely, it's great to have you in Dominica, as well as Susan. Welcome as well. It's good to have you in the studios here, and Mr. Gregoire. Let's start with you, Mr. Toisha. This is your second visit to Dominica. You were here, I hope I got the math correct, 37 years ago, and you did something very special. You created a documentary series on the Kalinago. We call them the Kalinagos. At the time you came, they were the Caribbeans. Since then, there has been legislation in Parliament to change it to the Kalinago territory, but you refer to them as the Carafuna. The last, and your film was titled "The Last of the Carafuna." Take us back, Mr. Toisha, to 37 years ago when you came to Dominica, and just what the film was about at that time.
At that time, I had learned, before I sailed to the Caribbean, I planned on spending about 2 years here. I was a still photographer, a photojournalist, and I learned about the Carib, or the Carafuna, on Dominica, and I was probably, like a lot of people, very surprised that there were Aboriginal, indigenous people still alive after almost 500 years, since actually 1493, when Columbus arrived on his second voyage and sailed by Dominica. He called it Sunday Island, Domingo in the Spanish, meaning Sunday. And that really amazed me. And also I was curious because all my life as a child, in the beginning, I was always loved Aboriginal people and American Indians, which I studied, and they made a war bonnet at one point. So combining, and they were seamen, that's another aspect, because I've been a sailor all my life, that intrigued me. So those were the motivations, and I wanted to become a documentary filmmaker. So that I came here. I had actually been here in '68 for a short time, and then the summer of '78, I came back to explore, sort of doing location exploration. So I had my crew lined up, and we sailed from St. Thomas and arrived here in February of '79, and we met Douglas Taylor. That was another very lucky break for us, because his wife was was a full-blooded Kalinago lady, and I don't know if you know about the history of Douglas Taylor, but he was a very prominent linguist. In fact, the expert on the circum-Caribbean migrations and also on the language, and made his life's work. So that was the entree into the Carib, was then called the Reserve, and we established friendship with the Louis Dupany family, where we lived. That was our production headquarters. The boat was anchored over by the Anchorage Hotel with a fellow staying aboard to make sure everything was safe there. And we proceeded to film 60mm Bolex camera, 100-foot rolls, 2.5 minutes at a time to shoot. And it was a cram course for me in filmmaking. My partner was a professional filmmaker and had worked in 60mm a lot, and was also a director. So from there, we went around the reserve, learned about their life, their basic life, learned about their concerns, what advances they had made since, let's say, the Carib War of 1930, and then the road that went through there from across the island, I believe in the late 1960s. In 1979, it was still unpaved. It was a basic north-south track, and I don't think there were many other, if any, side roads off that. So the Carib people walked everywhere. They were incredibly fit, and you can see in my film, and I cover that area, and they also walked in single file, even though they were on, let's say, the new road, and that was a holdover from the days when they were in jungle paths, and the paths were very narrow. There were a number of activities and cultural attributes that were holdover from the time when the Europeans arrived. The houses were built on stilts, and that was to keep the ocean breezes, the trade wind blowing through there, keeping it cool, and keeping insects and snakes on the ground. They had their particular way of catching the shrimp in the rivers, and I can go on and on about those native traits that they still had. What they didn't have, among other aspects, were the the language. They had forgotten their language, and Douglas Taylor makes a point. Made the point to me that what they learned were from his research, because there were two languages: the Arawak language from the people whom they conquered, and would take the women to be their wives, and that was a language spoke till the boy reached puberty. Then he had to speak the Carib language. So Douglas did a tremendous amount of research and wrote about it. In fact, he taught at Yale University on 2 different occasions. There's an amusing anecdote connected with that. When I asked his wife, Tina, how she liked to be in New Haven, Connecticut in the winter, and she shuddered, and she said, it reminded me the snow and ice of the Carib road there when it was rainy, because, of course, it was slick. So she preferred to be in Dominica. I believe now she's in England. I can't confirm that, but I would like to follow up on that. When I returned to the States, I went ahead, I used the expression blood out of a stone, that there was really no money to make this film, but I was determined to complete it. And I had to do a lot of research in the States to show the historical aspect, because again, very few people knew who the Carib people or they even existed. It was required to show the connection between their discovery and their history as well. So that was a long bent of intellectual and studying at the various repositories. The best was the one in the Queens, New York. It was established by one of the people who funded the Continental Railway in the States, and I'm not sure whether he felt guilt over what happened with the Aboriginal States, but be that as it may, he established the Huntington Free Library, and I spent a lot of time there. I was not able to take the books out and the records, but I did a lot of research there, and he actually filmed there. We also filmed at the Hay Foundation Indian on a museum where their repository, because the museum way uptown in Manhattan at 155th Street on the west side didn't have all the room for their exhibits. So we filmed there, and curiously enough, it was Theodore Roosevelt's great-granddaughter, who was a doctor of anthropology, who was in charge of that museum. And we also had Irving Rouse, who was the world's reputed expert on the Caribbean migrations, who had done a lot of archaeology in the Caribbean area and knew a lot about the Caribbean. So we have him on camera talking about the migrations, how the Carib people essentially left their forest area in what's now Venezuela on the Orinoco River and sailed up the chain, the bead, it's like a network of a necklace of chain of islands, sailing north. And their arrival, they had been in Dominica, but they had recently arrived here, and they were also making raiding voyages more to the west of here, and were known to get as far as what became the Virgin Islands. And then they returned here with their captives.
So just to interrupt you briefly, from what you're describing, the Caribbeans, the Kalinagos,
yes,
they have their origins from Venezuela?
The South American, the western part of South
America, including
yes,
Venezuela.
Well, that area, rainforest area, and
okay,
today there are Carib people there. And if you look at the physiology, the faces of the Carib people here, they're just like the people there.
Okay.
And they also have, as a little detail here, the people who were transported by the British wholesale from Dominica and St. Vincent, because St. Vincent was another high island and a fastness for the Carib people, to the coast of Central America, to the Honduras and what's Belize and that area. And they are well established there. Stan Creek, Dongriga, that area.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to find out, when you were in Dominica in '79 and you were doing this documentary, I'm curious to find out what did you get out of it in terms of people's the expressions, the way they express themselves, were they comfortable living in that arrangement that they had at the time in the territory?
The Kalinago,
right? The Kalinago people, yeah. And also, what did you get out of it? In terms of having met the people and interacted with them. What were your impressions then of them?
I think one word would characterize it as inspired, because we know that there were perhaps 3 other groups of indigenous people from the Bahamas, the western part of the Caribbean, and going down to South America, who all really essentially have disappeared. They were extinct. There are Simini, the Taino, and the Arawak, but the Kalinago are the biggest group today. But they've also have a cohesion, and to answer your question, in part, they have now, since I've been back, really established an identity, which they didn't have then. I didn't experience that. In fact, I had the distinct feeling that they felt they were really second-class citizens. They were not recognized, and before the road, their contacts were really with the French islands, mainly by canoe, north to Marie-Galante and Guadeloupe and south to Martinique. So they were not in contact. And then what's happened as well is that they've also, through the efforts of Ambassador Gregoire and the Save the Children and other agencies, are now and have been and are in contact with other Aboriginal people worldwide, but slowly through the Caribbean, circum-Caribbean area as well. Part of that, I believe, has to do with the young chief, Hilary Frederick, with his maybe called messianic vision of trying to bring the Kalinago awareness up and have the world, in a sense, aware of the Kalinago people, because at that time in the 70s there was a lot of awareness in the States with our people. We have a large population across the States of very different culturally people who were there also many thousands of years ago. As we all know, mainly probably came across the Bering Strait, but there's a question they may have also come from other places as well. But those people at the time were actually raising their own awareness and in a sense fighting with the powers to be out west. There were some confrontations with the FBI, and the history is there, but really psychologically a consciousness, because they too are on reservations or territories. And today it's pretty dismal, frankly. The progress that other people have come to the America, the land of opportunity, the American dream. They were the first people there, but essentially, in a percentage-wise, they don't really share in that. Some do. Right. The ones with the casinos, the state that I live in, there are a couple of casinos, and I mean, who's got the last laugh? Now they have the last laugh because they're immensely successful, and it's interesting to me. So, I don't know if I answered your question, but the Kalinago were a small people, and I felt when Save the Children, whom I had worked for as a still photographer on a freelance basis before I left, that was in the early 70s, they were able to make a difference in the lives. I was in Bangladesh for Save the Children Federation. Well, that was impossible. There are just too many people there to see. But and Ambassador Gregoire, I think, can address that question. He showed us some of the progress that was made there, and some of the existing, developments that he made there which are still there. Like I say, the cricket field, the fish reservoir, the Tawi, the big house, which unfortunately burned down, the awareness of the crafts, which as you drive through them, you can see that those are available to the tourists, and the tourist trade, which was very minimal. And today, of course, you have the eco-tourists. The people are here to see nature as it is, and also to witness and experience the local native people, and that's a whole nother issue that didn't really exist then. So we came, I think, at a watershed time in the experience of the California.
Excellent. And Susan, you're here with Mr. Teuscher, and tell us what got you interested in that type of project.
Well, I met Philip about 6 years ago, and one of the things he shared with me very quickly was that he had made this film, The Last of the Carafuna, and my first question was, well, what happened since then? That was 30 years ago, so what's going on? And he said, I have no idea. And I said, I really think, this time has elapsed. It would be very intriguing to find out what has happened in that period and do a follow-up film. So time has passed, right. And 6 years later, we're here. And we're here to do a trailer for the new film, which we are calling The Triumph of the Kalinago. Okay. And we say that because whatever challenges are out there for these people, they really have persevered, and that to me and to us is very exciting because many other tribes did not. So they honor, when we talk about that, it's an honoring of them and their ancestors.
Great. So you've been here for a few days. What were your first impressions of the Kalinagos?
Well, it's been quite inspiring for me because I found one word for me was courage. Every person that we've spoken to has such an intense feeling of courage and of persevering through all of these obstacles and all of the things that they face as challenges. And there are many. We see a lot of progress, but we also see there's many challenges ahead. But the indomitable spirit of the people is very evident, and I've been moved by that.
Excellent. But you mentioned that you're here only for the trailers. So when do you intend to complete the actual filming of the project?
Well, we realized that without coming here on a journey to see what's happening and to film the people now and what's going on, that we could not then go out and find funding, because being here has allowed us to speak to many people and to see what's going on here at this time. So we're going to make the trailer, and then we'll go out and find the funding for the film. When we cannot say the exact date, but our hope is within the next year we'll be back to do the actual documentary.
Oh, excellent. And Ambassador Gregoire, you're here as part of the project, and you had an involvement in 2014 working for the UNDP. You helped organize the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples. Just how did you get involved in that type of project? And then you can also tell us a little bit about the World Conference that you were able to organize in New York.
Well, Thompson, actually, I started working with the Kalinago people in 1984 when I became the director of Save the Children. That was the U.S. Save the Children had a program here. And I was the first Dominican director. And the major focus of that program was, in a nutshell, what I call cultural recuperation, helping the Kalinago people assert their rights, helping them to do development projects to address poverty, and also to connect to other Indian Native American tribes around the world, and to connect to the international. At that time, the international indigenous movement was emerging. And Save the Children played an important role in connecting them to the international. In fact, it's very interesting that the former chief, Garnet Joseph, he was one of my staff, and he was one of the Carib staff. The bulk of our work, as Philip mentioned when he was talking, was in the territory. We did a tremendous amount of work in really bringing to a high level the importance of the Kalinago people, and the fact that, frankly, I would say there was still this thing of them being second-class citizens in a sense. I have always said that the majority Dominican population has not treated the Kalinago well. There have been problems. In a sense, they never were equal or seen as equal to them, and that's, I think, one of the legacies of the colonial era. And then after slavery, the majority Dominican population, they hadn't really embraced them. But I want to say, though, that 85 to 90% of Dominicans have Kalinago blood, and that's something that we need to. Our country is emerging. We're not even 40 years old as an independent country. But in terms of our internal reality, to really unite our people, the Kalinagos is central to that. We really have to embrace the Kalinagos as our brothers and sisters. They're not these people who are over in the territory. There's still a number of villages like Font-Saint-Jean and Petite Savane and Good Hope and Vecas. These are very strong Kalinago communities still, and most of us in Dominica have Kalinago blood. So that was where my immersion in indigenous work started. And when I went to the UN as the ambassador, there was the process of developing the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And I immediately got immersed in that. And I think I was one of probably the most frontal ambassador on this question. And in that way, I was embraced by the global indigenous peoples movement, and had a tremendous relationship with them. And in 2007, when the UN adopted by acclamation the Declaration on Indigenous people, I was one of the people who was at the forefront of that. Fast forward to 2014, I should also say, before all of that, before I went to the UN, I had also written on the Caribs. The University of the West Indies put out an anthology. This is a reader on, it's called Ethnic Minorities in Caribbean Society. And myself and two other co-authors, we did the section on the Kalinagos. It's about 100 pages, more than 100 pages long. The reason why that is not well known is because it's in this anthology. So unless you know that that thing is there, but for people who are doing research. The other thing that happened, Thompson, was that after Save the Children phased out of Dominica, which is a very unfortunate development, because the government literally kicked us out. That was the government of Eugenia Charles. And they were saying that we were instigating, we were making the Caribs think they were different. And then we were agitators, and we were doing things they didn't like, that we were helping them assert themselves and so on. And we were thrown out. So what I did, was I formed a new organization from what was left of Save the Children. I formed the Dominican NGO, which is called Development Alternatives. And my colleague, Patrick Henderson, who used to be of the Peace Corps, he was the director, he was the executive director. And one of the main areas of program work was research on the Kalinago. So we set out to do research on the Kalinago. We started collecting all journal articles, things that had been published, and we had a large repository for material, and then we developed a bibliography, which was quite extensive. So during that time, we connected with a lot of American Indian tribes, those in South America, Central America. We also played a role in helping the indigenous people of the region in an organization called the Caribbean Organization of Indigenous People. We are sort of a resource group to them. And we sort of just built, but unfortunately, funding got very difficult after 5 years, and we sort of phased out. Yeah.
Very interesting indeed, and we want to open up the discussion to our listeners as well. Well, here we go. We already have a caller. Good afternoon, caller. Okay, we missed. Certainly, you can call us here. It's 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, and if you're calling from overseas, you can reach us at 305-432-9624. We are here talking to Mr. Philip Teuscher, who is a filmmaker and director of The Last of the Carafuna. We're also here with Susan Pellegrini, who is a producer and director of Synergy Production, and Ambassador Crispin Gregoire, who has been really one of the people at the forefront of making sure that the Kalinago peoples of Dominica are not forgotten. And they're here doing a film project, doing the trailer of a film called The Triumph of the Kalinago, which will actually chronicle the lives of the Kalinagos from the last time this film was made, 1980, up till now. And Mr. Teuscher, whilst you're with our callers to get in on the conversation, one of the things I know, in fact, I was reading an article from the New Chronicle of 1979, February 1979, which indicated that one of the features at the time when you were in the territory was the fact that there was a vibrant agriculture sector, and there was a lot of activity around the boxing plant or the banana packing station. This is now all gone. 37 years later, what are you hearing from the Kalinagos with regards to their livelihoods? Because at that time, a number of them were sustained by the banana crop. Now this is almost gone. What have they been telling you about how their lives have been impacted?
They've been impacted immensely because they were able to, it's a cash crop, excuse me, and there was a market for the bananas, and they were able to meet most of their basic expenses, and they also had their kitchen gardens as well. And what's happened is essentially, from what I heard before I came here and I've witnessed now, the bottom just fell out of the market, and it's created obvious hardship. It's affected progress, i.e., particularly the educational aspects, because it's very expensive for them to go on to higher education, to get transportation to the two high schools, which are in Marigot and Castle Bruce, to buy the books. And they also are not able to, essentially, it's difficult for them to even meet basic needs, which was not the case in when I was there.
Yeah, okay, excellent. Well, we have our first caller. Good afternoon, caller. Welcome to Talk on the Block.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon, Mr. Fountain, Honorable.
Yes, good afternoon.
Mr. Gregoire, we can't forget you, Mr. Gregoire.
Good afternoon.
And the others, welcome. And well, we met when you were here in the week there and then.
Yes.
It's very unfortunate that the program had to be stopped because you gave us a fantastic start. For example, like the Cabe, which was a historical building in Dominica. The cricket field, as you rightly mentioned, it is still very much in use. And then many other projects which the Kalinago people were involved in, because you had Kalinago people on the staff, like you mentioned, the past chief. You also had to have room of Mr. Laville and other people who were part of the working group. Mr. Henderson was part of the group also, and then you all gave us a tremendous start, because without you, I do not think would have an improved Jolly Johns or what have you. But had you been there by now, we would be a very much developed area. And then I want to thank you, Chris, for what you have done for us. And you still have to remember us and try as much as possible within your power to help us. Because as you rightly said, the gentleman rightly said about, the banana industry, which was our main cash crop, is no longer. So therefore, it defeats the purpose of economical development. And we want to thank you for everything that you have done. So, and maybe in the future, you will think of organizing some developmental program to help the Kalinago people. Anyway, thank you very much, and for the others, enjoy Dominica.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And I was just curious though. Is there anybody that you met when you did the first time that you've since met again, an individual?
I asked around because we made good friends there, and they were immensely supportive. That we couldn't have made the film by trekking back and forth across from the leeward side to the windward side. And as I mentioned, we stayed with the Dupany family. I understand that Louis Dupany, who was an extremely pleasant human being, just sweetheart, as we say, and his wife, they have passed on. I understand one of the daughters, Ruth, who was maybe 14 or 15 then, very beautiful, was in school, but again, I mentioned is struggling, because I remember they were studying at night with bottle torches. They didn't have they're not having
we call it bullseye locally.
Bullseye,
yes.
Really. And you can imagine. So they were doing their utmost, but it was difficult. And of course, the film, Last the Garifuna, one of the last shots is the youngest boy, who was probably 5 or 6. And I'm curious. I asked about Ruth. I understand that she's had a family and she's very different. It was kind of logistically difficult to get to see her, given what we had to get there in the few days we had to. But for sure, we'll be checking in to see her. I understand that Douglas Taylor's wife is living in Britain, whether she's still alive or not. Douglas Taylor died after that hurricane in 1979. He had another stroke, and his house was damaged. So, and I'm sure there are other people. Hilary Frederick, he must have been 20 or just 20 when he was invested as chief. He also has passed on. He got some kind of illness, evidently, and and died in the hospital here. So that I expected to meet him. And another person who evidently has Carib blood in his veins, who was our driver, Avondale Francis, or his nickname is Shix. I tried to contact him upon here, and Crispin had been helpful through that, but he was very busy with his taxi business, because he's the one who was also very responsible for our help, because we had transportation on the two occasions we were him, and he was indefatigable, driving us all over the place and giving us local knowledge. So that's probably, that's a long time. And in my mind, it's not a long time, but it is almost 40 years. And Lewis, you'll see how fit he was, because the Carib people were walking all the time up and down their fields. You see them, they were very, very fit. I'm guessing he was maybe in his 70s when he passed on, but I don't know. But for sure, when I return, I will get in touch with those people, because I was very touched by them. And they were the actors in the film.
Excellent. All right, we have some more callers. Good afternoon, caller.
Yes, Thompson, I think Tina
Excuse me?
Tina, she passed on a couple years ago.
Who did?
Tina Taylor.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, she did. Okay. All right. Well, thanks. He was just in that Tina Taylor passed a few years ago.
That's news to me.
Right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I'm from there, so I'm aware that she passed.
Okay.
Okay. She was actually living there. Did she die here in Dominica or in England?
Well, I think it's in Dominica, and I'm not sure, but she's in Dominica.
Okay.
But Taylor died in Barbados, and that's all.
Oh, okay. Well. Thanks so much for letting us know here.
Welcome, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Yeah. Just one of our listeners saying that Mr. Taylor died. Yes. Smith.
Yeah, Thompson, in your first question to me, you had asked me about the World Conference.
Yes.
And I wanted to say a few things about that and how it links to the Kalinagos. Well, just by a stroke of luck, with all that background that I had with the indigenous people, I end up being the person who would organize the World Conference. And that was, to me, the pinnacle of my life's work. I mean, I never in my dream would I think that somebody coming from Dominica could be the organizer of the first ever World Conference on Indigenous Peoples, which brought indigenous people from all over the world. And it was just a great experience being in the center of it all and making the decisions of how it would be organized.
And I'm assuming we had Dominica was represented.
Well, that was one of the sore spots for me, frankly, because despite all the letters that were sent by the UN to all the governments, Dominica's Kalinago people were not represented.
They were not. Is it that they were not interested, or they simply did not get the information?
They had the information. They were interested, but I guess the
funding to get them, the resources to get them,
to have a delegation, and I thought that it needed not be that way. But I don't know. I can't explain it. But I would say, however, that we now have two instruments from the UN for indigenous people globally. One of them is the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which was passed by the General Assembly in 2007. And then from the conference, we had the outcome it's called the Outcome Document of the World Conference on Indigenous People, which sets out the number of recommendations to how the United Nations will engage with indigenous peoples. And as we speak, in fact, last week, if I wasn't here for this visit, I would have participated in a meeting at the UN on one of the issues in the outcome document about how will indigenous people participate in the UN's work, because the indigenous people are very clear worldwide that they are not NGOs. They are many of them have governments. They have tribal governments. It's important for me to point out that some of the tribes, the Native Indian tribes in America, they have their own passports. They don't travel on U.S. passports. The tribe has a passport, and that is they can travel internationally on that passport. They have, for example, the U.S. has about 500 tribal governments, right? And the U.S. government does not recognize all the tribes. These are the tribal governments they recognize, but they are tribal governments that are not in that group. And then Canada has another 500 plus tribal governments as well. And of course, you have indigenous people throughout the world, right? I can't remember if the population, the total population, I think, is about 100 million worldwide, with a significant amount in Latin America, right? And it was an enormous task, and I had only 6 months to pull the conference together, just not enough time to do it. But I worked very closely with a group of countries called the Friends of the Indigenous Peoples, chaired by Mexico, and almost all the Latin American countries, Brazil, Venezuela, Bolivia, and so on, were in there. And at the actual conference, I organized it so that the president of Bolivia would be the keynote speaker, because he's the only indigenous president. He's the only president of a country who is an indigenous person.
Morales,
yes. Actually, I had a good relationship with him, and then I had the Mexican president, Mr. Pineto, speak as representing Latin America and the Caribbean, right? And then we had a speaker from Africa region and Asian region, and it was a great conference. I must say that one of the areas that was a big focus for the conference was the issue for women. We focused a lot on the future of indigenous women, because indigenous women have endured tremendous discrimination and also violence. And the conference had a big focus on that. There's a big focus on youth, and there's a big focus on livelihoods and economic development. And all of these issues that were in the outcome document are things that we intend to follow up around the world. And for Dominica specifically, there are a lot of things in there that Dominica can do. I think I welcome very much the government's move to name the territory, the Kalinago. That word actually, if you go back into the 1600s, Father Breton, when he was writing, he mentioned the name Kalinago. Of course, there have been different variations of names, like Carafuna, you have Carifuna, you have Carafuna. All of these are names that are relevant. They're all in there. But I clearly remember seeing Kalinago very early in my research, reading Father Breton's work. I think that there's much that the Kalinago people can still achieve. As I said, I see the need for a greater embrace of them and to appreciate them, because without the Kalinagos have played an extremely important historical role. They saved this country from the colonial onslaught for almost 2 centuries. And the reason why our country is still very much a virgin country is because of them. Their food, we have sort of retreated from the types of the food that they ate. Even them, I mean, cassava being one of their major food products, has declined tremendously. And I think that cassava is definitely a crop we must bring back.
Absolutely.
You know, because cassava is a very nutritious food, and not only it's a food, you also can make alcoholic drinks,
beer, and animal feed. It has a whole range.
And industrial starch.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when in my time growing up as a boy, people starched their clothes from cassava starch, right? I think I'm very, you know, I haven't been in the territory a lot since I left. It's 20 years since I was working there. And now when I saw it this time, I saw new roads, I saw a different territory, and then most significant, I saw a solar farm. They have built a solar farm. It's not yet commissioned. They're still working out. It will produce 1.3 megawatts of electricity, which they will sell to the grid. They're working out the final arrangements with the NTRC and Domlec. But I was really struck by that, and that I must say that's quite an achievement for them.
Excellent.
Yes.
Ms. Pellegrini, coming back to you, I just wanted to find out from you, how do you see, once the film is done, I know you're in the process of getting financing and all the rest of it, but how do you see a film like Triumph of the Kalinago helping to promote or bring some kind of global attention to the Kalinagos?
Well, what's really interesting now is that the documentary has become a form of entertainment. So once we make this film, we'll be able to distribute it all over the world, and many, many people will watch it. So there will be a lot of attention on the Kalinago based on it.
Excellent.
We have a caller?
Yes, we have. Actually, we have several of them now. Good afternoon, caller. Welcome to Talk on the Block.
Good afternoon, Samson.
Yes.
And good evening to Honorable Ambassador Gregoire and your guest.
Certainly.
I just have a comment and a question or a suggestion for Ambassador Gregoire. Given the unique circumstances of the Kalinago people's land ownership, which restricts their ability to obtain funding for any kind of sustainable development, is it in the plan, or would it be, or how does the United Nations view establishing a Kalinago Development Bank that would take into consideration the unique land holding situation that exists in the Kalinago territory and the inability of the Kalinago people to utilize those lands as being done in other parts of the country to take advantage of progress themselves in that way. I always think in terms of that the Kalinago people, due to their circumstances, should have a development bank specifically for their unique situation. I would like to get your thoughts on that, and thank you.
Yes. Very good.
Thank you very much, caller.
Very good question. Well, you know, I'm one of the strongest advocates of keeping the territory as it is on the communal land tenure, because without that, the Kalinago people would have probably disappeared already. That challenge that they have of accessing credit needs to be addressed. I totally agree with you, the need for a Kalinago Development Bank. I believe that there are donors that would support them on that, and I think the UN can facilitate, can be a facilitating entity like UNDP. I'm certainly, and already that is the direction that the Carib Council wants to go. I believe they will need initially a $10 million facility to set up a fund and then to build on that. And if they can get that $10 million as an initial amount, that should lead the way, and that will make a tremendous difference for them if they can have that access. I think the Kalinagos have great future, really.
Very, very good. All right, let's take this other caller. Good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon to you and all the listeners. Very good program.
Thank you.
Yes, the dukuna and the cassava bread are very tasty, very nice. And hats off to Kalinago people who stood up for us in many different ways. But he spoke about the violation of the women and the children, which I would like to know how are they going to curb that when some of the violations are being done by the very same Caribbean as well. So give us a little explanation. How are you all going to resolve that part of it? Thank you very much,
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chris. Ambassador Gregoire, yes, I'm sure you've dealt with this. You've seen this up front.
No, it's a very good question, and I think she has said very well what the problem is. It is perpetrated by indigenous men, yes, but also by non-indigenous men. I mean, I worked in the territory for many years. I've seen in Kalinago women exploited by men from outside, But more than that, it's something that the way you address this is going to be an education process. You know, people have to be sensitized. There are laws for violating people, for violence against women, and we just have to. The law must take its course, but we also have to, in tandem with the law, to educate people that violence against women is totally unacceptable, and cannot be the norm.
Yes, indeed. Well, we're quickly running out of time. We have just about 2 minutes left, and I guess I can just kind of go around quickly for your closing thoughts, and also to thank you for coming in and sharing with us, and also tell us as you close, Mr. Toisha, how can we get access to the last of the Carafuna?
be happy to get you a video disc. I just need a repository to send it. I received an email from Letitia. She gave me the email address and be happy to provide that. It runs 50 minutes, color, sync sound, has native music, and I haven't looked at the film myself in a while, and I suggest that Susan have a look at it because she's been here now. She'd never been here before, and I'm kind of curious myself, honestly. But I think in that film it was pretty comprehensive. I tried to cover the history, the state of the reserve at the time, and their aspirations. And I'm very heartened to have experienced and seen the last 4 or 5 days. There has been definite progress for these people, and I think their toughness and their resilience will see them through into well, it's just kind of a purple prose, but a more progressive and positive future. And I think if there's one key, it has to do with expanding the educational facilities for these people and for their younger people to be educated and have opportunities in education. And that's just not Kalinago, it's worldwide in these places, emerging economies, emerging countries. So that's what I see as the best. I'll be more than happy to provide you with what you're asking for.
Excellent, thank you. Suzanne?
Yes, I would just like to say that we are honored to be doing this film, and our plan here is to truly get the voices of the Kalinago people, what they are feeling now, what they're looking towards for the future in the film, so that 40 years from now, when we come back to do another, we will have had a true perspective from the people themselves.
Excellent, thank you. And final word, Mr. Ambassador?
Well, basically to say it has been the Kalinago people have shaped who Crispin Gregor is. I've learned tremendous about them. That was why I was, in addition to doing development work and programming for them, to do research, and then to come back and appreciate that even though Save the Children was abruptly kicked out, some of the things that we were able to achieve together still remains. That was extremely gratifying. I saw a cricket game there on Saturday, and it was just like to now appreciate what I had done for them, and yes.
Well, that's really good, and let me say thanks to you, Mr. Teuchner, Ms. Pellegrini, and Ambassador Gregor. Thank you so much for coming in this afternoon and for really talking about this film. And I wish you every success in both in the trailer and in the final product, the triumph of the Kalinago. Trust you can get all of the financing that you need, and thank you for what you are attempting to do for the Kalinagos of Dominica.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure is ours. Thank you.
Thank you. And to all of our listeners who join us, let me thank all of you for being part of Talk on the Block for this afternoon. We'll be back on your radio tomorrow at the same time with another topic of interest to all of you. In the meantime, we wish all of you very good afternoon. Take care, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Cool Med Studio.